Hey, what's up everybody? This is Muth24, and this is part 2 of my Masquerade Crossbone Gundam full cloth version review. You can check out part 1 in the link I'm going to provide in the annotations here. But part 2, I'm going to start off here by going over one thing that I think really sets the Crossbone Gundam apart from other Masquerades, aside from the obvious fact that it is a pirate Gundam, and that's the sheer number of accessories and weapons that this kit comes with. The Crossbone Gundam comes with 2 heat knives, which you can clip into his hands by a little peg on the inside, and they do stay pretty secure. You see the peg right there. And if you want to store these, you can take the handle and slide it into this little gap here on the back of his leg, and it'll stick in there no problem. And then for the blade itself, if you want to give him more of like a kicking pose, you can pop the blade into the bottom of his foot there. One of the more interesting accessories the Crossbone Gundam comes with are these 2 chain pieces here, and they're not particularly flexible. They're supposed to be really solid, but the reason for that is when you pull off the skirt armor here, I mentioned before there's a hinge here for when you put it into the little grappling hook. If you flip these 2 pieces around, and then take the chain, flip it kind of upside down like this into the bottom of there, and then pop that back into the ball joint on the skirt armor, you have the scissor anchors, and you can put one on either side of there if you want to. I figured I'd remove the core fighter so you guys could get a better view of the back skirt armor here, but you get 2 of these screw whip pieces, and these have just a flexible coil underneath. And if you take the side of the back skirt armor here and lift it up enough and then pop it out, you can take the edge of the coil here, pop it into there, and then using this little peg here in the middle, you can slide that into his hand, and once it's in his hand you can adjust the coil of the screw whip however you see fit. The Buster Gun here is basically the equivalent of any beam rifle for any other mobile suit, but as you can see it's mostly white. I did go ahead and paint some of the gray parts with a gray Gundam marker, but this is one of a very few number of pieces that I actually painted on the kit, and if you want to put it in his hand, you've got the pegs here. Otherwise, if you want to put it on his side skirt, you've got this little peg here, and either way he holds them pretty solid. Pop right in there. The beam Zanber is another piece that I went ahead and painted, and I just did some gray around the edges here, but you do also get the cool curved looking beam saber piece here, and then again he can hold it in his hand or put it on his skirt armor with that little peg there. To combine these 2 into the Zan Buster, you're going to take the handle of the Buster Gun here and flip that down, then flip this little piece up. Then you're going to take the handle for the beam Zanber, flip this part up and back, and then rotate it around. Flip this part forward, push that back down, and then just take the peg and slip into the socket here, and then kind of rest that back against there, and you've got the beam Zanber. While the beam Zanber portion is normally held up here, there is a peg on the opposite side of this section of it that allows him to hold onto it. It's not quite as smooth and streamlined as anything else that he'll hold onto, but once you get into position you'll see it's off to an angle a little bit, and he does hold onto it quite well. As for these white bits attached to the wrist here, you have 2 of these clear pink brand markers that you can attach to either side, or you get the big beam shield, which, as cool as it does look, it is a bit of an awkward position to put it in, and the connection isn't quite as solid as pretty much any other accessory that this kit comes with. These skull pieces are normally attached to the full cloth, but in the event that you want to attach them to the Crossbone's fists, like punching gloves, you can put the hand over this little bar here, and he doesn't even have to have his fists wrapped around it. You just have to slide it in, and once it's in there, just fold back the teeth, if you will, and there you go. The crossbow here, otherwise known as the Peacock Smasher, can open up, and you'll notice that the gray parts here I painted, normally those come in white. You can extend the little yellow fin pieces on the end, and then there is a peg here if you wanted to pop it into the side skirts for storage or whatever. Although for the handle itself, this side doesn't have a peg, whereas this one does, so you can really only put it on one hand, which is a bit disappointing, but not the end of the world or anything. Although, admittedly, it is a lot heavier in the front and doesn't always like to stay in place. And when it is attached to the side skirt armor, it does hold pretty well, although admittedly it looks pretty awkward just hanging off the back there as wide as it is. Probably my favorite of all the accessories that he comes with, though, is this gigantic beam saber that's got the skull and crossbones on either side. And you do get a peg where you can stick it in his skirt armor. And despite its size, it doesn't look quite as awkward as the crossbow peacock smasher. But you do get pegs on either side of it to put into his hand. And sometimes it does take a little wiggling to get in there. And despite the fact that it is pretty large and rather heavy, it only tends to drag down the wrist and not the whole arm, unlike the peacock smasher. And when you pop in all these little triangular beam effect parts into the sides, depending on how much you like the mobile suit, it's either going to look completely awesome or completely ridiculous. You do get two standard style beam sabers here in the Core Fighter, and they're kind of held in place by these little nubs here. I don't know how well you can see them on the camera, but they're very small. They hold in place fairly well, though over time it will become more loose. And to pop these normal beams in there, you just put them in the hole, although admittedly these are a lot looser than on most other master grade beam sabers, so it's a little bit of a disappointment, but at the same time I can't really see myself using these beam sabers as much as the gigantic one or the beam Zanber. To transform the Core Fighter, the easiest place to start here is with these big thrusters on the back, and you're just going to fold those up, and then you are going to take every single one of these little bits on the back here and kind of fold them until they're in a big sort of a octagonal shape there. And then for the front, you're going to kind of pull this forwards and push it up. And it does take a little bit of force, but once you get it, pull the front nose piece forward there. And that is the transformed Core Fighter. The cockpit of the Core Fighter can open, and you can see pilot Tobia Aronnax there. And even when the connectors are down to the sides there, you can still slide the beam saber handles back in, and the Core Fighter will hold on to them pretty well. So there wraps up part 2 of this review. Check back for part 3 when I'll go over the full cloth, and I will give you guys my final thoughts on the kit. See you then.